Secretary-General, welcome to CGTN. Earlier, at the opening speech of the BRI Forum, Chinese President Xi Jinping had been talking about the new plans for Belt and Road Initiative. You later, in your speech, talk about seizing that momentum. Can we?
Yes, of course. I think that today China has a leading role in promoting multilateralism in the world. China has a vision that globalization is a good thing that needs to be promoted, even if there are aspects that can be corrected, can be improved. Some people are left behind. But the Chinese approach is that we need better globalization, and we need, with the Belt and Road Initiative, to create the conditions for larger areas of the world to benefit, in order exactly for globalization to be an opportunity for all, for nobody to be left behind, as we also are committed to through the Agenda 2030 that was approved by the General Assembly of the United Nations.
Yeah.
So I think this morning's speech is the confirmation of what has been the very clear commitment of China to a fair globalization, to fair and free trade, and to a multilateral governance able to respond to the global challenges we have today.
Well, this is a window opportunity, many say, but the question is whether we are going to catch this window opportunity. For example, Secretary General, you talk about the common ground between BRI and SDG by 2030. Of course, that's the United Nations set up. Chinese President Xi Jinping was also among many state leaders there to sign up on it. But what about the action plans? We need to take action, don't we?
Of course, but the advantage of the Belt and Road Initiative is that it's not only a concept, it is a combination of a number of concrete projects that are being implemented in many areas of the world.
What to you are the most important projects?
Well, those that relate to infrastructure that can connect, but also those that relate to the peoples-to-peoples connection. Because we live in a world where there are too many conflicts. We live in a world where there are too many misunderstandings between different religions, different cultures. So this is not only a material development project, this is a project to bring people together. This is not something only for development, it's also for peace. And this is the great value of this initiative, and this is why it is so much linked to the agendas of the United Nations that are for sustainable development and for sustaining peace.
Okay, so China has already got its action plan, for example, with BRI platform that everybody join in. But what about the others? When you talk about SDG to be achieved by 2030, there's a lot of pressure and a lot of work has to be done day by day.
The leadership must be of member states. Member states must assume sustainable development goals in relation to education, to health, to jobs, to the build-up of institutions.
Is it happening with all of these
poverty.
political changes recently, Mr. Secretary General?
In all these aspects, member states need to make sure that they include the very ambitious objectives that the General Assembly of the United Nations approved, with President Xi present. Member states must be able to include them in their budgets, in their plans, in their strategies. And the advantage of projects like the Belt and Road is that they fit exactly in those projects because they create the conditions for development to be sustainable and for development to be inclusive. Because sometimes you can have a huge increase of an economy, but with many becoming richer and richer and many becoming poorer and poorer. And this is exactly the kind of development we do not want.
Are you seeing member states are really doing that, majority of them?
I think there are many member states that are already doing them. There is still a long way to go. And there is still a lot in organizations like the United Nations, the World Bank, the IMF, the other international financial institutions like the new Asian Infrastructure Bank that was launched by China. There's a lot that everybody can do to support member states, but the leadership is very important. The leadership must be of the member states.
But there are many political changes going on since right before and after you come into the office as Secretary General. So what would that mean for this implementation?
We engage with all of them to make them understand that the world is now small, that we need to be able to live together, to respect each other, And namely in relation to climate change, that's probably the most divisive aspect that is now very much in the media.
Yes.
In relation to climate change, this is a threat to the future of mankind, and we need to make sure that what was agreed in Paris is fully implemented.
But
and
they
again,
say
again, this is an area where I count a lot on China's leadership.
But they say, well, we have other priorities.
No, but you know, even when governments are reluctant, we see now that green business is good business. Those countries, those companies that are investing in the green economy are the ones that in the future will be more profitable because they will be more advanced technologically with better capacity to face the challenges of the future. So even when governments are reluctant, the business community, the cities, the regions, the societies, I'm very confident they will do everything to make sure that we will be able to tame climate change. We will be able to create the conditions for the world to be spared to a tragedy that our grandchildren would not deserve.
The longer vision, that's what we're talking about here. Could BRI, by the way, since we're sitting here at the BRI forum, could that help with that longer vision?
That is what we are missing in today's world, strategic vision, long-term vision. You know, many political systems are such that people live in such a frantic cycle in which everybody is looking at the polls every day and decisions are thinking about the next week or the next elections. We need more and more strategic visions. We need more and more to understand that our problems can only be solved in a long-term perspective. And that has a lot to do with the Chinese tradition. I think the Chinese tradition, probably coming from Confucius, has always allowed for a wiser approach to problems instead of the very excited attempt to solve everything at the same time and in the end not being able to solve anything at all.
China is a developing country.
But it is also becoming a developed country, and in many aspects is more developed than most of the other countries.
And yet anew in that area, and therefore this is an interesting match we're talking about, that UN with decades of experiences and hands-on knowledge, and China providing together with others some of the funding to be able to make things come true. Nobody has ever tested that before, at least with developing countries. So, Mr. Secretary General, I guess that's one of the most exciting experiments we ever have.
It's a perfect marriage, but it's not only...
Is that how you describe it?
It's not only knowledge in the UN and funding in China. There is a lot of knowledge in China, and this knowledge is very important also for us. Not that we are going to copy the Chinese model, because China has specific conditions for its development, but we can learn the lessons of the Chinese development in order to avoid mistakes in other parts of the world, and we can use the capacities that were developed in China in technology, in strategies to fight poverty, in all areas today of industrial and services development, in order to help other countries be able to, I would say, to have a quantum leap, to have a jump.
I love that word.
Not to have to go all the way, but to be able to take profit of the Chinese experience to jump into a higher level of development.
This is interesting, the quantum jump, but at the same time, step by step. How is that match going to be like?
Well, we need to go step by step to prepare the quantum leap.
Good way of saying it, Secretary General. Even if about the Belt and Road Initiative, people are still having this Cold War mentality, suggesting, well, this is China expanding geopolitically, this and that. What is your judgment of the nature of this and China's incentive to do it?
China is today a global economic powerhouse, and there is a mutual benefit on this. I mean, if China will help a country develop its economy, China will also benefit. It's a mutual benefit. It's a win-win situation. And so obviously we can see all these projects as a way also to promote Chinese investment, Chinese trade, Chinese wealth. It is true, but that's exactly the win-win situation. You try to make others rich and also become richer doing that. If everybody would behave in the same way, the world would be much better.
Well, Mr. Secretary General, we talk about grand schemes like the Sustainable Development Goals and the Belt and Road Initiative, but people talk about early harvest and lower hanging fruit. You have to give people confidence that it's moving in the right direction. What are the factors, Mr. Secretary General, you would look at in order to make that judgment?
Well, I just had an example this afternoon in the debate. The simple implementation of the new rules in relation to the facilitation of trade will reduce by 14.3% the costs of trade. So there are simple things that we can do that do not require a lot of investment. They just require good policies, good norms, good rules. This is the software of the economy in which we can very quickly achieve high results. If you build a harbor, it will take time. But of course the harbor will then be essential to promote trade, to guarantee wealth, guarantee growth. But there are many small things we can do, just improving policies, just making sure that we are more fair in the way we act. There are many things, simplifying rules, many things we can do that will have an immediate impact in the lives of people with a very low cost.
Mr. Secretary General, this is your first exclusive TV interview when you are in China. And certainly a lot of people are watching very closely, both inside this country and beyond. They want to hear from you. Where do you think the world should be going with your sitting in the office as Secretary General?
Well, the world is not going because I'm sitting in the office of Secretary General. What is important today, more important than anything else, is to people to be able to overcome their contradictions, to respect each other, and to work together for peace. China is doing all these efforts.
You and President Xi are communicating about that.
We should be. China is doing all these efforts with the Belt and Road Initiative. Imagine if the countries where these investments are being made will enter into a conflict, the investment will be lost. So peace is a basic condition for development, and peace is something that we need to put as our first priority in everything we do, and all countries should have it in their first priorities. They say in the village of my grandparents, and my grandfather was very keen on telling me this: it is better a bad agreement than a good war.
How smart their generation is. Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary General, for being with us. Thank you for joining us on CGTN.
It's a pleasure.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.